Okay, so up next we have Talia Kuras from University of New Hampshire, and I will let you get started.
Excellent. Super happy to be here today in a room full of Saltmarsh Sparrow people. You all who are Saltmarsh Sparrow people know just how rare that is. So I'm here today to talk about some of my research from my master's thesis at the University of New Hampshire, looking at the effects of home range size and space use on our male Saltmarsh Sparrows' reproductive success. Saltmarsh sparrows, as a brief introduction, are a coastal saltmarsh obligate species with a breeding range from Maine through Virginia. They have a very unique mating system, these saltmarsh sparrows. They are polygynandrous and highly promiscuous. So males will mate with multiple females, females will mate with multiple males, and as a result, there is a high level of multiple paternity in their nests, where each of those three nestlings that we have up top could potentially have a different sire. They're non-territorial and non-pair bonding, so males and females do not necessarily pair up and mate with the same individual throughout the mating season. In fact, because they are so multiply mating and they do not have that pair bonding, we see high levels of multiple paternity, where individual saltmarsh sparrows, where within a nest of saltmarsh sparrows from one female, we can see a different sire for each nestling. So in about 80% of nests that produce multiple offspring, we see a different, at least two different sires, two or more different sires. And I'm gonna dispute a little bit with Deirdre's before. So there are reports in the literature, and I can say from my own observational studies that we do see a little bit of evidence of female mate choice, where some females will accept copulation events from some males. I won't say solicit because I do agree. I have not seen what we traditionally think of as a solicitation display from many of these individuals. But we have seen females accept copulation events from some males and reject them from others. So this leads to my general thesis, my guiding question for my thesis, which is what features influence paternity in our saltmarsh sparrows? If we think of them like traditional birds, we might think that things that drive paternity in traditional birds might affect paternity in saltmarsh sparrows. For instance, weight is a common factor driving paternity in birds, where larger males often outcompete smaller males. We also think about a lot of morphometric features, like larger wing size, larger leg size could make males more appealing or more successful. And of course, plumage, we think of our northern cardinals, which have that nice bright red plumage. The individuals with more vibrant plumage often get more females. But past research, particularly from our lab, the Kovacs lab at UNH, has shown minimal correlation in these traits in male reproductive success. So we don't find that larger males produce more offspring. We don't find that the males with the bigger wings necessarily produce more offspring. And we have found no real connection between plumage types and scores and male reproductive success. So that leads to my guiding question, which is what features do influence paternity in saltmarsh sparrows? And instead of thinking them like traditional birdie birds, I decided to flip that on its head and think about what features influence paternity in a less traditional, non-bird mating systems that are polygynandrous and multiply mating, species like deer, species like bear, species like squirrels. I know that that bird right there does not look much like a squirrel, but boy, howdy, does he behave like one. They often run under the vegetation in marshes. They fly quite rarely, they don't sing, they travel in packs to attempt to mate with females. And as a result, one of the traits that I'm choosing to focus on for my research, particularly this talk today, is space use. In a lot of multiply mating and promiscuous species, space use and home range size in particular is a primary driver of individual reproductive success. So the thought there is that if you're, say, a bear wandering through the woods and you travel a long distance and you're a male bear, you're more likely to interact with female bears than other males who just sit there and sit on their log and, eat their honeypots or whatever. So we decided to see if male saltmarsh sparrow home range size correlates with reproductive success in our sparrows. My data collection took place at 2 long-term demographic sites monitored by the Saltmarsh Habitat and Indian Research Program, or SHARP. One at Chapman's Landing in Stratham, New Hampshire, and one at Eldridge Marsh in Wells, Maine. These sites have been monitored for about 12 years by the University of New Hampshire and partner organizations in SHARP. And I will say that while I have worked with these sites for many years, the research that I go over today took place in the summer of 2022. For you Saltmarsh Sparrow folks out there, remember that was a drought year, which is why some of my nest numbers and nestling survival numbers were so high. You'll see that in a little bit. So my data collection consisted of 3 primary programs, or 3 primary activities. First, nest monitoring and demographic nestling banding. Nest monitoring and nesting banding, where we go out to the marsh. We would locate nests with nestlings. We would track their success from hopefully hatching all the way through fledging. We'd band our nestlings once they reach between 5 and 10 days of age, and we'd collect genetic samples from those individuals. We also conducted adult banding sessions where we would set up mist nets in the marsh and capture males and females that flew into our nets. Also quite a few red-winged blackbirds and marsh wrens, which is always a good time. After banding those, when we were banding those adults, we would give each adult a unique USGS identification band, as well as a site-specific color band. Our females were given specialized identification tags called pit tags, so that when we found a nest, we could put something called a pit tag reader that next to that nest and figure out that is the nest for such and such female and leave her about her day. We don't need to try to net her again. She can raise those nestlings as she pleases. On our males, we also put a unique pair of color bands, which we use to identify those males when we were out in the field as part of our color band resighting activities. We did these color band resighting activities so that we could get spatial locations for males beyond just mist netting. Anyone who's tried to net a bird in the marsh knows that once they've hit the net maybe once or twice, they get pretty smart and they know just how to avoid it. So we wanted to be able to identify those males from a distance. And finally, we collected spatial data using color band resighting surveys, where we would systematically survey each of our 2 study marshes, and we'll go over that in just a little bit. So during our adult banding, we banded approximately 275 Saltmarsh sparrows over the course of 2 years. About 150 of those came during our 2022 season. Like I said, we gave our females pit tags. This is an example of one right there, being held in our pit tag reader. We also gave our males a unique combination of color bands. And as we were banding, we also collected blood samples, which we are planning to use for DNA analysis as part of our investigations of paternity. Now, we talked about our color band resighting surveys when we were collecting location data for our males. Spatial location and behavioral data were recorded for 49 color banded males at one of our sites, our New Hampshire site, Chapman's Landing, during the 2022 field season. And we did this, we also collected, sorry, it's not on here, spatial data for 51 color banded males at our site in Wells, Maine as well. And we collected this data 3 ways. First, through systematic resighting of males. So we had a survey system set up where my beloved field tech would take this mobile survey platform out to the marsh. It's about a 2-meter high ladder with a scope mounted on the top. She went to 35 different systematically or randomly placed and evenly spread points at each marsh, 10 at our smaller marsh in New Hampshire, and 15 at our larger marsh in Maine. Each survey would last about 15 minutes, where she'd be up on that platform. She would identify each male by their unique color band combination. She'd record their behavior as either singing, singing, perching, chasing, if we did see a female chase happening, copulation. We did record a few of those events, which is quite interesting, or foraging. And she'd also record the presence or absence of unbanded individuals in that area, so we could be sure to, go over there, get their genetic information, monitor that area a little more closely. We also recorded male locations during incidental resightings. So if we saw a male when we were out in the marsh, say checking on a nest, and we saw that he had a color band combination, like this fella right here, who it's a bit hard to see, but white over green. We would record his location, we would record his behavior, just as we would doing the systematic resighting surveys. And finally, we recorded male locations through mist net captures. So when we were out in the marsh mist netting individuals, we would record their location as the location where they hit the net that we put up. And these location data were used to generate home ranges for each male with more than 4 locations using a method called kernel density estimation, where essentially we plug all of their points into a program, and that program calculates the probability that the male will be found somewhere in that area between those points. Here we define home range as the 95% utilization distribution, or where that male is likely to be found in a marsh 95% of the time. And so we also calculated their what we call their core use area, or the 50% utilization distribution, where that male is likely to be 50% or more of the time. They're more concentrated area of where they're hanging out. This is an example of how we use that location data to create our male home ranges. So you can see, I don't know how to use that laser pointer there. Each of these gold triangles represent our male's home ranges. Our male's locations. So we saw this fella 38350 here and here and here and here and here. We then plugged those data into our home range program and generated this blue polygon here, which is this 95% home range, as well as this yellow polygon here, which is this 50% core use area. We then counted the number of nests found within each home range and each core use area, so that we could compare, are the males that have large home ranges interacting with more nests? Because the species is non-territorial, the nest, so they don't compete with each other, home ranges often overlap, which you'll see in just a second when I put our full set on the screen. The location of a nest in the male's home range indicates that that male's home range overlaps with the female's home range. It indicates that that could be a potential female that male is interacting with, and potentially a female that male is mating with. So we think that more nests within a home range may indicate that that male has more mating opportunities. So that was an example at our site in Wells, Maine, which is our larger site. It's about 38 hectare. This is an example of one of our male home ranges at our smaller site at Chapman's Landing in Stratham, New Hampshire. It's about 13 hectare, a third of the size. Interestingly, it had, our first site had 44 nests that we monitored to completion in Maine. This site, this 13 hectare little Saltmarsh Sparrow Disneyland, as I belovedly call it, had 63 nests. And for those of you who are interested, our nesting success rate in 2022, our fledge rate was about 52% of nests, fledged nestlings. It was 51 at Eldridge. It was 53 at Chapman's Landing. That's what I'm saying. That drought was good for something, and that's helping Saltmarsh sparrows. Wow. So this is a complete set of our home ranges that we developed at Eldridge Marsh. As I said, we had 51 color banded males at this site, so we were able to generate, and we were only able to generate home ranges for 19 of these males. That's just due to limitations in resighting. As Deirdre had mentioned, they're quite hard to see in the marsh. That's why we had that elevated platform. 17 of these home ranges were for what we believe are pure Saltmarsh sparrows, and two of the individuals that we tracked, we believe are Nelson sparrows, which is a closely related species that Saltmarsh sparrows hybridize with at our sites in Maine and New Hampshire. So we are going to genetically confirm their species identifications. We have not done that yet, though, so we have not discarded any of their home ranges. But I think it's really interesting if we look here. First of all, we can see that some of these males are using space differently. We can see that some of these individual home ranges are larger or smaller than others. Some of them are concentrated around different centralized areas, but all of them overlap with this corner of the marsh in the southeast corner that has the highest nest density of the entire marsh. So whereas this marsh, like I said, is 38 hectare large and had 44 total nests, over 30 of those nests are in that southeast corner, and the males are hanging out there. We also see this variation in male home range size. The mean home range size for males at Eldridge is 9 hectare with a range from 0.7 to 21.2 hectare. And like I said, I think it's very interesting that there is individual variation in the size and location of these home ranges. We see something similar here at Chapman's Landing, our smaller site in New Hampshire. And here we have 49 color banded males. And we were able to generate home ranges in core use areas for just 9 of those males. All of them were saltmarsh sparrows. We saw a similar range in home range sizes from 14 hectare at the mean, with a range of 1.6 to 26.9 hectare. And you can see, while Chapman's Landing is a little bit more of a limited site, it's smaller. So they do have a similar concentration around the center of Chapman's Landing. We see that some saltmarsh sparrow home ranges venture a little bit north and a little bit south of the site boundaries. We do think we do have evidence. My colleague Grace, who you should all stick around for after lunch, monitors some spots in the marsh north of that area, which are inaccessible from where my study site is, but accessible from other areas. And she has caught some of my color-banded males quite a bit north. So we just think they might be venturing farther than we can physically get in a day. But it just shows that these males do have individual variation. And of our 9 male saltmarsh sparrow males, 7 of their home ranges encompassed 60% or more of the study site. So some of them are taking up that entire space available in this very small marsh. And 3 of our male home ranges contained all 62 known nests that we had at Chapman's Landing. So that is pretty interesting that some of them may be interacting with all of the females that are available. So we've thought about this. We have generated these home ranges. How does that potentially influence rates of paternity in our saltmarsh sparrows? How do we bring it back to that guiding question? To think about, how home range might impact rates of paternity, we have to think, does home range size vary from individual to individual? And we do see that it does. So this is the distribution of male home range sizes at Chapman's Landing and Eldridge, and we see that, well, a lot of those home range sizes are, between 0 and 10 hectare, so quite small. Some of them do have quite large home ranges. There is individual variation amongst males for home range size. And now we'll think about how that affects nests. Like we said, nests indicate, the presence of a nest indicates that a female is present in the area. If a male overlaps with a lot of nests, we would intuitively think that he might interact with a lot of females, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing males with home ranges that are larger overlap with more nests and potentially have more mating opportunities with more females than those males that have smaller home ranges. Now, this is only a portion of my master's thesis. Sorry, I guess I didn't fill this slide because, the future is still full of opportunity. No, I actually did. I think this is the wrong version of this slide. I practiced last night. A lot of you all do really important direct research that is directly impacting the success of saltmarsh sparrows, the conservation of this species. And this can seem a little abstract. Why do we care about rates of paternity when these individuals could be gone in 2035? First of all, like I've said, like I've alluded to, all of our monitoring has taken place on long-term monitoring and conservation sites in New Hampshire and Maine. So all of the data that we've collected here contributes to a larger data set, which is being used to inform conservation of the species in central New England, where we're located, as well as southern New England and our partners in Connecticut, New York, and beyond. Second, as I alluded to before, this species is highly polygynandrous. They are non-pair bonding. They are particularly non-birdie birds. And they have a mating system that's more common in mammals and bugs and fish than in birds. So they present this really awesome opportunity to study that kind of mating system in a taxa where it's rare. It's exciting, it's different, and it really hooks people into the conservation of the species. Because if you say the most promiscuous bird in the world lives in Rhode Island, their mind's blown. They want to know more. They want to know more about why it's important and why marshes are important. In conclusion, I'd like to thank all of these wonderful folks, my field technicians, my lab at UNH, and the sparrows themselves for their moderate cooperation. And I'm here to take any questions. UNH has actually featured our lab's work on a YouTube video that's really nice and informative if you want to learn more about what we do.